Hi, and thank you for joining us on the webinar that I am hosting today on co-regulation and understanding the importance and how that really impacts emotional regulation. So I am going to share my screen, and for those of you that are joining in late, you can kind of follow along, or I should have a recording available later on after this training. So I really created this training for mothers. It's not just for mothers, it's also for dads, but they're not typically the ones that are reaching out to necessarily get a training. But it's also for teachers, educators, therapists, anyone that's really working with children that are struggling with emotional meltdowns and regulation. That's kind of who I really wanted to target in this training. And so I decided to do it just because I feel like I talk with a lot of families, and this is just an area, it's an area of struggle that families really are struggling in. So we're going to kind of jump right in. So what I really want to show you in this is how to unlock those secrets of understanding your child's behavior through co-regulation. And so I really feel like co-regulation is something that is, again, it's so important for us to understand, in that our kids that are just struggling with being able to calm down, that we can help them just by co-regulating with them. And so, and what that's going to do is it's going to help us to be able to create those deeper connections and restore that peace, and also that connection with our kids, because I feel like when we're having those constant meltdowns over and over and over again, it really does put a rift in your relationship with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends, really with everybody. And we want to get those relationships back. And so this is going to also help you to really restore that peace that's been missing, without the mom guilt. No shame. There's no shame in this, because I'm also finding that when we have kids that are really struggling, whether it's with anxiety or whether it's with meltdowns, regulation, anger, opposition, there's a lot of shame that comes along with that. So I just want to acknowledge that right now. No shame. Okay. I'm here to help you. Um, and I'm really passionate about this just because of some, different things that have happened with my own life, with my own kids, and things that I've learned. So we're going to kind of jump in a little bit. So my goal. All right. So if you stay to the end, I'm going to, you just reach out to me. I'm going to give you some of the different handouts and tool that I've created. Some of them you might have access to if you're already on my email list. For those of you that know me or that follow me, I really like making things. I like making tools. I like sending them to families. So if you're struggling with like ABC, I'm going to try to see what I can create so that you have a resource or tool to be able to, help with that. And so, for anyone that has attended it, I'll make sure that you get access to some of those different tools. I'll be sending them to you. And if you have tools or resources that you want, let me know too, because like I said, I really like creating these things. So, okay. Um, so again, what makes this training different? There's a lot of trainings that are going on right now with um, you know, meltdowns, regulation, parenting. There's a lot of information. I know when I'm on Facebook and Instagram, you see a lot of people posting and videos and different things on that. So what makes this different? I mean, I feel like this is a different approach because we're really focusing on resetting the nervous system. It's not counseling. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with counseling. I'm just saying that this is a different approach. And so for me, I had my kids in counseling. I was in counseling. I was trying to figure out all the different things that we needed to do, and nothing was working. And it wasn't really until I learned about this that it was my aha moment. And so when I learned about resetting the nervous system, that's what really made the difference with addressing the underlying cause for those behaviors that I was seeing. So a little bit about me. My name is Kathleen Yap. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. I have been working with children for over 25 years. I am the owner of Helping Hands Therapy Services. I'm the mother of twin teenagers, so that's so much fun. I started learning about the nervous system with my own family first, just because of some different things that had happened with my child had gotten sick, and so had really we started struggling with a lot of anxiety and behaviors and meltdowns that were related. It was like a neurological issue. Um, and but when we started to get better, we were stuck. And so that's where I kind of had learned about how his nervous system pretty much had gotten fried. And he had learned all these different patterns of behavior, and it was just repeating. It was on just repeat, 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 repeat. And so, and I was just doing everything that I knew. And so we were just stuck in this vicious cycle. And so it wasn't until I really started learning, I knew that there was something nervous system, neurological related, but I didn't really know what or how to do that. So I started really researching and learning and seeking out training and getting additional certifications so that I could help my own family first. And then I knew that as I started to learn that I really wanted to be able to reach out and teach more people, because to me, this was really game changer for us. And so I'm using the strategies that I'm going to talk about on a pretty much a daily basis. I use it with myself, I use it with my kids, and I use it with my patients and their families. So, all right. So I just want to start by saying first, I've done a lot of things right. I think I've done a pretty good job, right? And so I feel like I have this down, not down, but I have a pretty good grasp on, for the most part, really being able to recognize what's nervous system, fight or flight, all the different things. I talk a lot about the vagus nerve and how that really helps with like resetting our nervous system. So I've done a lot of things right, but I've done a lot of things wrong. And so, and I have to own that. And so, I really got stuck. I was doing all the things that were probably the worst thing that I needed to do with dealing with a child that was in a fight or flight state. And so, I wasn't listening. I was setting really too hard of boundaries, and I was triggering my kids and they were triggering me, and it just got bad. And so it was not working. I wasn't listening. I wasn't really listening to what they were saying and what their bodies were saying, and what I was seeing. And so we're gonna kind of talk about a lot of these different things, because the things that I've learned, I want to show you guys, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. And so it's been a real learning. It was very humbling for me, and I can't say I'm perfect, because I'm not. And so, but I do think that this has made a really big difference for us. So after doing this for about 20 years, I realized a couple things. So, number one, there's almost always an underlying cause to behaviors. And I think that we don't always understand that. And so we have to understand that for some kids, they might not have the words to be able to communicate to us. And so that behavior, it's going to be that communication. So if they don't have the words to tell us what it is that they're feeling and what it is that they're experiencing, we really need to try to see if we can dig a little bit deeper to kind of figure out what their bodies and what it is that they're trying to tell us. So if they don't have the vocabulary to express their emotions, they might not, know I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm afraid. They, when with younger kids, especially if they don't have that emotional intelligence yet, that's not developed yet. And so they might know I'm happy or I'm sad, right? And so they haven't really learned what some of those other emotions are. So it's our job to really kind of, we have to figure it out. We have to be a little bit of an investigator, right? So we need to kind of work on trying to identify the root cause. Is it a sensory issue? Is it a need that's not being met? Are they struggling emotionally? Are they having anxiety? Are they are they just frustrated and they don't know how to express that? Are they stuck? And so we have to start asking ourselves some of those different questions. It's really easy for us to just be, nope, it's a behavior, I'm going to address it. Nope, it's a behavior, I'm going to address it. And, you know, And I used to do that as well. And I used to do that even with some of the families that I worked with some of the different kids. We just always attributed this to a behavior. We have to set some limits and some boundaries, and the behaviors will go away. Not necessarily the case. So, the next thing is that sometimes kids really can't calm down on their own, and they really do need you to help them to calm down. And so, especially if a child, I have a lot of parents at times, sometimes they'll say, but when they're upset, they say they don't want a hug. They run away from me. They don't want me to help them to calm down. They just want to go away. And that is fine. I mean, sometimes we really need to be respectful of that, but sometimes, they're running, and that's, again, that could be fight or flight. They're going to escape. They're running away. Because they're overloaded for some reason. They're not going to calm down necessarily on their own, or they're going to be doing something unsafe in the meantime. So they might really need you to intervene. Okay. Kudos if we can recognize it as they're starting to spiral before they hit to that place of no return, where they really definitely need a little bit of help to be able to calm down. But we need to recognize that they might not calm down on their own, or they might want to try to calm down on their own, and they can't. And so as they get older, and they have the emotional vocabulary, they might be able to tell us, I need a minute, I need you to stop, I need quiet, I need some space. But especially with a younger kid, or kids that they don't really know what it is that they're feeling or why they're doing what they're doing, they need us to help them. And so maybe it is, and again, telling them to do deep breathing in the middle of a meltdown is not necessarily going to work, right? And so I used to do that with, my kids, try to do the deep breathing. It's not working. So because, again, right in that moment, they're not going to do the deep breathing, but they might need you to just be there. They might need a hug. They might need you to sit. They might need you to be their safe person, because because they're not feeling safe in that particular moment. So we need to be that person. So they're still younger kids. They're still developing their self-regulation skills. And so, and this is where the vagus nerve kind of gets triggered, right? Because it really is a key player in the nervous system, and it can really play a very key role in helping the body to be able to calm down. And so if we can be practicing some of these different strategies on their own, we can create some automatic responses that will trigger the vagus nerve to help regulate that child's emotion in that moment. And again, it's going to help reconnect with you as well as themselves. And again, it's going to help them to return to that place of safety and security. And then the last thing is that a lot of times you're going to see the same patterns over and over and over and over again, until we rewire the brain to respond differently. The brain is going to return to what it knows. So if it knows that when you get upset, you have a meltdown, you're going to continue to have a meltdown. If it learns that when I get upset, I use ABCD strategies to pull you out of, the fight or flight, and we are able to wire that into the brain, then the brain's going to be more than likely to use some of those strategies on an automatic basis. So we call this ability of the brain's ability to adapt and change, we call it neuroplasticity. And when you are constantly responding to the child's behavior, and we're using some of these different strategies, if we are being understanding, if we have positive reinforcement, right? And empathy, if we can teach them, we're going to help with rewiring those neural pathways. And we need that to happen for them to have healthy responses and to break that pattern, because otherwise it's going to be this constant cycle of like the negative cycle, or the outbursts, or the negativity. They get triggered and they go this way, and we want them to go that way. So we really need to wire into the brain different responses. And so, and I discovered this the hard way, right? And so, and then I'm telling you all of these different things so that you can do it in a little bit of an easier way, because we got to a point where it just was not good at my house, and I really didn't know what to do to help my family. And so, it took me a couple of years of really just trying to figure it out, because I didn't have anybody that could really answer my questions and telling me what to do to help them. And I sought out a lot of counselors. I sought out a lot of different therapists. We tried lots of different things. And so And that's why I'm trying to put together these little mini trainings so that you can have an easier time trying to figure it out for yourself. So the hard way, okay, we're going to kind of go through what some of these different things, are. So when we are trying to correct or address behaviors without really understanding that without really understanding what the problem is. And that's what most people do, right? And so we just try to address the behavior, and we're not really trying to seek out what is the real problem, right? After we address the behavior, whether the strategy worked or not, the next problem is that we're looking for immediate change. Well, that's not going to work either. These things are not necessarily going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time. And then the next issue is that when we are addressing emotional regulation, we're only modifying the external factors and we're not considering the internal factors. So we're modifying the environment, right? Oh, it's noisy outside. He doesn't like to go out in public. That's what's triggering him. So we're just going to like decrease the amount of stimulation on the outside. But we're really not addressing the internal problems. Is that what's going on at that particular time on the inside? So whether it's, the heartbeat too fast, we're feeling anxious, we're feeling anxiety, we need to address those internal factors as well, because that's those are more automatic responses. They're most of the time they're related to the external factors, and so those internal responses are in fact reactions to what's going on the outside. But we really need to address both. Those are what play a really key role in the emotional regulation. So what if I said that there was an easier way to improve behaviors and emotional regulation? Because I really do think that there is, right? And so so they're not doing the same thing over and over again, like beating a dead horse. So there is an easier way. Okay. So in the past 5 years, I've really focused on learning how to do this. And if I feel like I found my aha moment. And so I'm going to kind of get into that a little bit more. And so first, my disclaimer. So the information is training is a public service for informational and educational purposes. It should not be construed as medical advice. I am an OT. I am not getting up here presenting on this is OT for your child. Okay. Each child's medical, sensory, and emotional needs are different. And therefore, you really should be consulting with a licensed healthcare professional for your child before starting any kind of sensory or therapy program. And although every effort is made to ensure this material is accurate and up to date, it's provided for the convenience of the user and should not be considered definitive. So these strategies really do need to be individualized, and the results are going to vary. So and improvements are not guaranteed, and they're not going to happen overnight. That's not to say that you might not get some improvement overnight, but it's not guaranteed. Right. So now we're going to kind of talk about like what I found are just because this is a short training, right? 3 game-changing strategies that I feel have made a really big difference for us and for the families that I work with. Okay, so the first one is we really want to take the time to explore the emotions behind the behavior, right? So remember what I said is that there's almost always an underlying cause to the behavior. So that first strategy is that we really need to take the time to explore what is triggering the behavior, right? And so it might be because, again, we're just seeing the aftermath. We don't know what's going on necessarily with our kids. We don't know what is driving that. Is it fear? Is it anxiety? A lot of times it is fear and anxiety, right? And so even with opposition, opposition is probably one of the most frustrating things because you're like, oh my gosh, I wish you would just do what I asked you to do, right? But when kids are kind of being oppositional, no, I'm not. We think, I know I am very much guilty of that. I feel like you're doing this on purpose just to not listen to me. You're being defiant, right? And I've had many a conversation with my own child, right? And so I'm not being defiant, Mom, but when I feel like a failure, I feel like this is too hard and I'm scared, or I don't know how to start, or I'm overwhelmed, right? Those are the emotions that might be triggering it. And they're going to go, what did I say? That they're going to go what they know, right? And so we rewire the brain. And so if their go-to is opposition, then you're going to see opposition. If their go-to is rage, then they're going to go, you're going to see rage. If their go-to is crying or running away or whatever it is, that's going to be the behavior. That's their go-to. And it could be triggered by all different sorts of emotions. And so we don't really know what it is because we're just seeing the behavior. We have to ask the questions. And we might not they might not, again, be able to tell us. So it's our job to watch, right? It's our job to listen. What is it that they're really saying, right? And so if what happened right before the behavior? Johnny's crying, he's throwing his toys, and it just seems like he's mad because I told him to clean up. Well, no, he might not be mad. Yes, he's mad because he has to clean up, but we didn't see that like something got broke right beforehand, and now we're telling him to clean up, and all he wants to do is rebuild that tower again. And so, or if the child's going to school and they don't want to go to school and that just comes across refusal, well, you just don't want to get up because he's lazy and he doesn't want to go, right? And so, but the reality is no, Johnny has a test today, and Johnny is scared that he's not going to know what to do. Johnny doesn't want to be a failure. All Johnny's friends do really well in school and do well on those tests. And so Johnny doesn't want to have to be the only one that isn't doing well and when everyone's talking about their grades afterwards. So there's all different things that could be really triggering some of those different emotions. So we just need to, I'm sorry, those behaviors. So we just need to figure out like what emotion's driving that. So the next strategy is focus on making small changes over time that can build off of each other versus immediate results. This is hard because especially if you're in the moment when, oh my God, I just need a little bit of relief. I know I said this all the time. I just want to be able to get up, get dressed, and get my kids out the door, right, on time so that we're not late for everything without meltdowns happening. And I feel like that's a lot of parents will come to me and tell me that. Like it's just those transitions are so hard, right? And we're trying to fix all of it all at the same time. Well, because I got to get out the door, right? And so if getting up is hard and you don't want to eat and you don't want to take a shower and you don't want to get dressed and then you don't want to come downstairs, you don't want to sit next to your sister because she makes too much noise and then the dogs are barking, there's too much noise, and then the car ride makes me sick. There's a lot of different things that are going on, right? Talk about emotions, right? There's a lot of different things that are going on right now that are going to trigger the behavior. And so I'm not saying that we can't focus on all those different things because I do need all those things to happen for us to successfully be able to get out the door. But like for our kids who are already struggling, if we're putting all those demands on them all at once, that's going to make it really hard, right? And so it's easier. We also need to set them up for success. So if we just pick one thing, right, so maybe the goal is, all right, in the mornings, I know you don't like to get up in the mornings. So what's a way that we can work on just getting up to help you be successful and the child for being, to empower them that like, oh my God, you got up on your own and I only had to ask you once. That's great. And so if we just focus on just that one win, and making success with that versus, well, you got up in the morning, but then you were fighting with your brother and then fighting over the TV and then screaming at the dog and then everything spiraled. Well, then we're still in the same boat and we're still not going to get out the door on time. We need to really focus on just trying to do one or two things so that we could be successful with that. And the next thing is that we want to focus on strategies that address both the internal and the external factors. And so again, I think that it's really easy for us to kind of just, well, Johnny's getting overloaded. And so I'm going to turn the lights out. I'm going to take his phone away because because he's on his phone so much that when I talk to him, he can't, he just can't even listen to me. So I'm going to take the phone so he has to focus on me. Well, just took the phone and now he's got no coping skills and he's got no regulation and he's got no way to be able to calm himself down. And so we just kind of threw him off a cliff. He's just going to completely spiral then. And so I'm not saying that we don't need to address the external factors, but we also really need to make sure we address like what's going on in there. And that's where we want to teach some different strategies for that emotional internal regulation and teaching what's going on in the body, right? And so internal focus. So we need to address those feelings. Do you know what your feelings are? That's hard, right? Especially if you have a kid that might not cognitively be at a level that's really ready to express it. But we need to start. We need to give them the words and the language so that way they can communicate with us like I'm feeling frustrated or I'm upset or I'm sad. There's pictures are really good and stories are amazing. Kids really relate to stories. because they're just much more relatable with that. And so um, we want to give them just a different way for them to be able to recognize on other people, all right, what's going on with the emotions as well as themselves. And so um, and then also just practicing those different techniques to help with working on that regulation so that we can help with resetting the nervous system. That's a really big key as well. And so whether it's mindfulness or whether it's, just different relaxation, we have to work on resetting the nervous system to get the nervous system to a calm place. And so that's going to be really big key because that way when we have the stressors that are coming, if the body is more used to knowing how to get into a regulated place, right? It's going to be easier for them to not be so triggered. And I know that that's a little bit hard for a lot of people. It's, well, I don't know how to do these strategies. I don't know how to get my kid regulated. And I understand that, but that's not something I can teach in a short course. And that's where you need to be probably working with somebody for them to be able to help you to develop strategies for your particular child, because I can say do A, B, and C, but maybe that's not your child's issue. And so that's where it really needs to be individualized, where sometimes you might need a little bit of help, or at least to help you to figure out like how I can work on some of those different, internal regulation, internal awareness, internal body awareness strategies. Um, and so those are the different things, as far as for the internal and external factors. So, um, some of the other things that examples might be, working on like routines and predictability, because again, like kids like really like to know what routines are. I do the same thing every day, same thing, same thing, same thing. So the external factor might be that we're going to use a visual schedule, right? Because that's going to help you to know what it is that you need to do. And the internal factor would be that if there's a change to the routine, helping them to be able to have those coping skills to be able to manage, understand if there's been a change to the routine, and then giving them the ability to learn how to regulate so that they're not losing their mind when there has been a change, so they have a little bit better, coping skills for that. Um, so we're going to I just kind of went through a lot of these different things. So again, strategy number one, we want to take the time to explore the emotions behind the behavior, right? We really need to do that. All right. So I already gave you some of those different examples. And then strategy number two, all right, we want to focus on making small changes over time versus immediate results. So then we can build, right? And so we're learning success, right? So we have something little, right? And then we can eventually get bigger. I talk about that in some of my other trainings about like how big is your box, right? And so because it's also kind of working on our resilience, right? And so because if you're only able to tolerate this, right, you're going to get triggered really easy. We have to be able to be successful with this, and eventually that box gets wider. We need to be able to do that. Our kids need to be able to do that. We can't, if their box is this big and we need, in order for them to build that resilience, we need them to be successful with this. And as they get to be successful, they're going to learn like, okay, I can cope with this. And then eventually my box is going to get wider, and then they're going to have more resilience. And then strategy number three, that we're going to be address both the internal and the external factors. Okay. And so that's what's going on the outside, right? The things, so the environment, right? And so visually, so too much noise, too much stimulation, too much, you know, um, crowds and people, too much, just too many different types of stimulation. The TV's on, the dog is barking. Noise tends to be really triggering for a lot of kids. So those are external factors. And then the internal would be what's going on in the inside. Okay. Giving them those strategies that, can you feel that your heart is beating too fast? Can you feel that you're starting to get overwhelmed and overwhelmed? So giving them those, practicing those different techniques, even, and again, you can do this in a younger child, just be creative, and we have to do it during play, right? And so because they're not going to understand, we're going to work on deep breathing now. No, a kid that's 3, or a kid that doesn't follow directions is not really going to work on deep breathing. And so you need to do it in a way that, how can we address it? Well, we do it in the context of play. We're going to practice on blowing the pinwheel. We're going to pretend that we're blowing out a birthday candle. Right? We just have to practice these different things within the context of play. And so that way they have a better idea um, when their body needs it. What have we trained our brain so that we're able to go and pull from that? So. All right. And so I'm going to give just a couple examples of some different, two different kids that we have used some of these different techniques with. So um, one of them, her name is Mary, and she is a teenager and, had significant anxiety, didn't like to go, out in public. Really, if something was changing for her, she would shut down. Well, she's not going to go to school. She's not going to get in the car. She's going to kind of just go and not even talk to mom, nothing. And so um, we worked with mom with just really being able to recognize what some of those different cues were for her to be able to understand, like, okay, so if you kind of see all of a sudden where Mary just goes and was being, talkative for Mary and then just shuts down, done, right? Um, and then when you try to, but no, we got to go, Mary. Mary's like, no, I'm not going. I'm not going. I'm not going. And so, and Mary would again be very, defiant, resistant. Really kind of just like pinpointing, okay, like what is it that is upsetting you? What is it that is that you're afraid of? And so we worked with mom to be able to recognize some of those different, strategies and techniques, and then also with Mary herself on using some of these different techniques for her to kind of be aware of what her triggers were. What were the things were upsetting you? What are the things that are setting you over the edge? What are the things that when they happen that you're not really able to cope? And so, and then we did a lot of different, regulating techniques. We worked on just those in the mindfulness techniques and the relaxation techniques, and just like what I call interoception, internal awareness of what's going on in the inside of your body. So we worked on a lot of those. And so, and I know when I had talked with mom, it's just like she didn't really see that there was any difference. Um, it seemed every day there wasn't really a difference. And then one day mom came in and she's like, you know what? We had XYZ happen and it was a change, and that normally would have sent her over the edge where she would have had a complete meltdown and would have been done. And Mary didn't do that. So Mary was able to cope and Mary was able to verbalize her frustration. And it did take Mary a little bit of time for her to be able to like come out of it, but it didn't send her to complete shutdown. It just got her kind of off track a little bit, and mom was able to redirect her and they were able to continue with the rest of their day and do what it is that they needed to do. And so that's the example for Mary. Again, we're working with Mary for a couple of weeks, months where we weren't really seeing in that moment, we weren't really seeing anything. But when it came down to where it would have been something big, that's when all of a sudden we really did see like, wow, Mary was able to it became an automatic response where Mary was able to pick those different things up and use them, and it was able to keep her from completely shutting down. And the same thing for Lewis. So Lewis is a little boy, and we would see him we were seeing him for OT, and we were also using the Safe and Sound protocol, which is a, regulation protocol to help with resetting the vagus nerve. So we were working with that. And so, and then I was also working with mom just with being able to recognize, some of these different strategies. We did a lot of games and we did a lot of pictures. We did a lot of coloring, kind of like, okay, when you're feeling angry, what color makes you feel angry? So he was able to say like, well, red makes me feel angry. And so really just using some of those different for age appropriate way to kind of work on expressing emotions. And so, but mom had said too that, different things, the transitions over time, it seemed like it didn't really necessarily from on a day-to-day basis seem like it was making a difference, but mom was able to see when she looked at it like over time, right? And so, and that he was able to start to express himself like, I'm feeling angry right now, which was great because again, he didn't have those words initially to be able to verbalize that. And then mom was able to be like, okay, you're angry. Well, let's work on some of these, things that you could do to work on your anger. Whereas before he would just fall apart and mom's like, okay, great. I don't even know like what you're mad at, what you're upset about, because you can't even tell me at that moment why you're screaming and yelling. Um, and I don't even know what to do because you're just going from 0 to 100. And so as he was able to start to develop the words to be able to express, I'm getting angry, I'm feeling tired, or I don't want to go, or I'm feeling scared, we were able to, mom was able to help him to be able to, work through some of those fears and some of those feelings, because again, they're very big emotions, and was able to use some of the different strategies. So, but it's really listening, because really it could have been, what Lewis was just having a meltdown. And so mom could have mom was getting stuck at that point where it's just like he's just falling down on, the floor, screaming and crying, and I'm pretty much picking him up and having to carry him out the door. She was getting called at school to come and pick him up, and she just really didn't know what it was that she needed to do. And so when we were able to, back off a little bit and just kind of start, at a lower level and build up to it, that's where we're able to, make some gains and make a difference. So, okay, so in conclusion, so I've talked a lot about, some of these, different things. And so, I know it's a lot, but it's not a lot. I haven't really been able to go into too much, but I only have but so much time on this webinar. And so, but I need you to know that like you do have the power, to be able to do some of these things ourselves. So we covered a lot of information. I hope that you found that it was helpful and relatable and made you start thinking differently. Um, there's just not really a way to cover all this information in just 1 hour. It's really hard sometimes to be able to generalize it to your specific need. And just so that you are aware, if you're kind of thinking like, okay, great, I think that this is really helpful, but I don't really know, how do I use this for my child or for the kids I work with? So we do have more trainings that are available. I have lots of resources if you're on my email list that I give you that are these little trainings, videos and different things. But if you're really struggling where I'm like, I really want more help so that I know how to use some of these different, things with my own kid, we do have a more in-depth, training with private consultations so that you can get more of the tools and that they're more individualized, to help you with what you need. I can't work with everyone. I do have a limited people that I do work with, and so that's why I kind of created some of these trainings, because I, I'm trained in the safe and sound protocol. I'm trained in a lot of different things. And so, but I can't work with all the families that we get referrals for. And so I started to develop some different trainings. I have one for parents and I have one for therapists. And so, that way it kind of, I'm doing the training. So I'm teaching you some of the different things that I would be doing if I was working one-on-one with your child. And so, um, and because you're attending the webinar, I did want to kind of make it as a special, offer. So that way, if you wanted to be able to access it, you would be able to, get further training in that. So, I'm only right now, like I said, we're constantly rebuilding it and remodeling it and redoing it. And so I'm only opening up to a couple people because I am putting some coaching with it. So, um, you know, the biggest takeaway that I need you to understand is that you have a role in this co-regulation. It's a game changer to understand that you can help your child with co-regulating. But I think that the hard thing that a lot of parents really struggle with is like, do you know where and how to start? And if you're kind of like, yeah, I totally understand because I know what works with my kid, great, start implementing those things now. That's the best place to start. But if you're kind of like, I don't even know, I have no idea where I'm supposed to start. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how to recognize why my kid's having the meltdown. Or sometimes it's also, I have one of these that like my child, I know what to do, but my child's not going to listen to me. And it'll be much better if it comes from somebody else. Sometimes there's that problem too. So that's why we have, again, created some of these other trainings that are available. So you have the power to decode your child's behavior and to cultivate their well-being. And so, and that's where like this training that I made, it really is supposed to help you to be able to unlock what's going on so that you can really transform some of the meltdowns and make things a little bit more manageable. So It's called the vagus nerve masterclass. And so I'm also in the process of creating this community. And so, but the masterclass has lots of different, trainings and different things that are available, and I'm constantly adding things to it. And the goal is to help your child to build some emotional resiliency by unleashing the power of the vagus nerve. And so because the vagus nerve really can be the key with helping to reset the nervous system, because it's the longest nerve in the body and it controls a lot of those autonomic responses. And so if you're kind of struggling where, okay, I am doing, those external factors, the vagus nerve is really those internal factors that we're talking about. And that's where I feel like a lot of people are struggling. They don't really know how to use these vagus nerve strategies for their child, or to really kind of know like okay, I understand that this is, but I don't know how to make this work for us. And so I really am trying to do, these masterclass trainings so that I can equip both parents and therapists so that they can be able to use them, and to have a community support so that if you are struggling, we can post those different things and then hopefully be able to answer, your questions for you. I am really trying to add, because I know it's a lot of information. And so I've tried, and because I like to create things. And so I've kind of added a whole bunch of different things that I feel are really helpful. And so I have a training program. It's called Emotional Reset Training. And what I've done was I just kind of broke down, like, if you were to buy these things like individually, right? Like I spent my time making them. And so, or, one-on-one, like working with families. So this is what the value would be if you were to pay for some of these different things. So a training that I made on like emotional reset. So that value is $97. So the online course that I made for parents and therapists, I do sell it. The one for parents is $247, but the one for therapists is actually $347, because you get AOTA continuing education units for that. I've also really developed some sound frequencies that I've gotten to kind of put together, because there's a lot of research because of how the vagus nerve goes. And we can stimulate the vagus nerve through the power of sound. That's how some of these listening programs work, because we are stimulating the vagus nerve to help with resetting the nervous system. And again, so that value would be $97. I've created some other blueprints, for stress, ebooks and different things. And so the stress one is $97. The ebooks that are available are $74. The emotional regulation toolbox, which is a whole slew of different handouts and just ebooks and worksheets to really kind of, if you're working on regulation with your child and I don't really know where to start. I don't know how to work on emotions. Well, I created handouts for that, because a lot of people don't know how to do that either. And so we really did create some of these different things, so that way you have tools and resources so that you can know where to start. And so that value is about $197. And so we have an emotion guide, which again is just if you're trying to work on teaching what feelings feel like. What does anger feel like in your body? Where might you feel that in your body? So we call that an emotion guide. And that kind of goes along with the emotions and feelings workbook, which are more worksheets. And then I'm adding 90 days of email Q&A support. And so that means that if you're taking one of these courses and trainings, then you have questions, you can email me for 90 days, and I'll respond to it with, regarding, specifics for your child about the course. And so if you look at like all of that whole value is about $997, right? That's what the value would be. That's not what, I would be charging you, but that's what that value is, right? If you break it down. So let's talk about like who's this work for then? How do you know, like, would this be something that's appropriate for me? Well, if you have a child that's struggling with emotional regulation, if you are a parent who is struggling with their own nervous system, oh, I was there, and you're not, and you want help with not reacting to your own child. Or if you are a therapist that's working with families and children with emotional regulation difficulties, all of these would be appropriate for you to be able to do, any of these trainings for the nervous system, and use some of these different coping strategies and visual tools. And I have some ebooks, all the different strategies. All of these would be appropriate if you fall into one of these different categories. So I know me personally, I had two choices, right? Because I was not in a good place. I was not with my family. So for my own family, I could keep doing what I was doing, and I could pray that something was going to work, but nothing was working, right? And so I decided that I could stay there or I could do something else. And so kind of for you, it's the same thing. You can use the strategies that I talked about in this training. There's lots of stuff that it is in my email list. So join the email list because I give you a lot of content and then you can take it and apply what's applicable to you, right? You can stay there. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're kind of like, well, no, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. My child is stuck and I don't know what to do. Then you might want to look at the second option. And that's what I had to do. I had to dig deeper. I had to learn more about what was going to work for my family. I had to learn what was going on with my kid because I knew I could not keep going the way that I was going. I needed to learn, like I could research everything, but I didn't know how am I supposed to apply this? And so I took a lot of classes, I took a lot of trainings, I got some certifications so that I could learn how to efficiently and effectively apply these strategies. That's what I needed to learn, what to do, and that's what I'm offering to you. So if you're kind of like, I need to know what's going to work for my family, I need help, right? Because it's hard to do it on your own. Sometimes you need more help. That's what the second option is for. So if you need more help, okay, then look at what these courses are. And if you need help beyond that, and we're not really talking about in this, but I do some, one-on-one coaching to really take you through some of these different things. Okay. If you take the additional training, which does have some coaching, right? It's got a little bit in it. You'll learn how to apply these things to your own life and the families you're working with, and if you're a therapist and your kids. It is more investment, but it does come with more resources. And those things are all going to help. So these are just some testimonials of different people because I've had this course out for about a year. And so, with some of my therapists that came to it, they had said that it really gave them a lot of great insight on how the nervous system and all the senses play a huge role in the person's emotional state and their ability to regulate. My therapists that have taken this course really have taken this and started to integrate it into their own practice. And for the parents, I had two parents that gave me some testimonials. And the one is the therapist that said that the course helped her to understand the role of the vagus nerve in everyday life situations. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, but this course really solidified what I can do to help my young children when they are working through their emotions every day, instead of just watching them and feeling overwhelmed and defeated. Kathleen was able to take various broad subject matters that have taken me years to learn and refine them in a manner to help parents understand how sensory processing affects emotions and behaviors. More importantly, I now feel empowered to take actions to support my children in a loving manner, providing them with tools that will help them in their entire lives. And this course will be a game changer for all parents who take it. And then I had one more parent that gave me a testimony that said, as a parent of a child who struggles with to regulate his powerful emotions, this course was a game changer. Because of Kathy's program, I now have effective tools that I can use to empower my son and others around me to take back control and experience self-regulation like never before. Absolutely life-changing. And these are just two of the testimonies that we've had from people just by giving them a couple tools that they can use for their own kids and the kids that they are working with. So again, these are just some different things that I'm kind of putting together, what I can package together because I just want to be able to help people. So like I said, we have the emotional reset training, vagus nerve masterclass, which is the online on-demand course, the sound healing frequencies, the stress elimination blueprint, the ebook downloads, the emotional regulation toolbox, which is like 20 different downloads of different, at least 20, I keep adding things to it, of different sensory tools, visual tools to help with regulation, the emotion guide, the emotion feelings workbook, and the 90 days email support. So all of that. That value again is $997 if you add all that together, right? But then I'm also throwing in, because I know that people will take courses and they're like, well, I don't really know what to do with that. So I am doing free 30-minute consults or coaching calls, and then access to the community of resources, right? And so that means I'm putting different information, different trainings out there. You'll have access to that, but I can't do that for everybody. And so that's why I'm only doing the bonus for the first 20 people, because I can't do any more consults than that in my time. So, and that value is $297 to be able to have access to that. So, And then I'm doing another bonus that we are going to try to do free group coaching call with live Q&A. We're going to try to do 3 of those for 3 months. I'm going to try to do 1 a month, right? And so a coaching call. So that way you have, again, where you have a time to really be able to ask those questions about, okay, well, how do I do this for my kid? How do I do this? How am I going to integrate this? So those are going to be 3 group coaching calls with live Q&A. And again, also for the first 20 people. So like I said, all the different things that you'll get when you add those 2 bonuses, that comes to $1,543. But again, that's not what you actually would be paying for. So, so we have here the coaching calls and the group coaching training. So if all this training did, all right, was help you to be able to recognize what emotions were triggering your child's behavior. So just need to ask yourself, would it be worth it? If the training, the additional training, right, gave you just 1 or 2 strategies to help you change the way that you respond to your child and help you stay grounded or regulated, would it be worth it? And if it made the meltdowns, the resistance, and oppositional behaviors just a little bit more manageable and less frequent, so you're not losing your mind, would it be worth it? I need you to ask yourself that, because if you're kind of saying, is it worth the investment? Is it worth me taking another training? Is it worth me spending the time to listen to, some videos? Is it worth it? Is it worth me making that investment? I don't know. And that's what we have to ask yourself that. All right. Ask yourself, what would it be worth to you? Right? Would it be $500, $1,000 more? What would it be worth so that you got a little bit of relief? How much would you pay to get just a little bit of relief for you and your child? Just so that y'all know, I work with a few clients. I have very few clients that I work with right now, just because I am managing, my business, and I am trying to, train my staff so that they are able to use these, strategies with the families that we're working with. So we either charge per hour, self-pay, or we bill their insurance, because insurance does not always cover emotional regulation, right? And so I'm charging, what I'm charging for this training is not any more than really what I would be charging to be working one-on-one if you were coming to see us at the clinic. Right. So if you were to work with me for 2 coaching sessions alone, you would pay over $500. And that doesn't include, all the tools that I created. And like currently the sale, the course goes for $397 for the general public. That's for the for the one for therapists as well as one for parents. But because you're listening here and I do really want to try to make a difference, I am giving it as a discount for $297. And that includes everything in the course and the coaching calls and all of that. So if you decided that you wanted, more information and training, there's the link right there. And then you could scan the QR code too, and it'll take you right there, because there is a coupon on it for taking the course. So you can, take the discount. So, and again, if you decide, nope, this isn't for me, I'm happy and content with where we're at, then I hope that you're able to use some of the different techniques and strategies that we talked about. So you had 2 choices, right? So the first one is do nothing, use the strategies we talked about. It's 100% risk-free, right? So it's not going to hurt for you to stay there, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And for some people, that's where they need to be. But the second one is where you're making the small investment today compared to all the value you're going to get in your return, right? Just give it a shot, right? What's it going to hurt? But if it works, great. And if it doesn't, just ask for your money back, and I'll return it to you. So we do have that 30-day guarantee. If you sign up today, and if you don't like it for any reason, I don't care if it's 29 days, 23 hours and 59 minutes, just let me know and I'll give you your money back. So I just realized that I did not put my website on there. So I'll have to get that back to you. I'll put that back in here. So, but the real question is it worth spending just a few minutes of your time to check this out? Which, if it does, even half of what I've claimed here today on this webinar, it will pay for itself. So again, here is the website. So go ahead, sign up there. And then if you have any other questions, most of you know how to find me. My website is www.helpinghandstherapyservices.com, and you can send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to see how I can help. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found this webinar a little bit informative. So I look forward to talking to you. Thank you so much.